Okay. That's Steve? I can hear you, Steve. Can you hear me?
Can anyone hear me? No, no, no. Hello?
I can hear you. I
I
can
can't
hear
hear
you.
anybody.
I can hear you.
Uh,
Can you hear me?
I can hear both of you. Can you hear me?
Yes. Who's that? Susan?
Yes. Yes.
Oh, hi, Susan. I can hear you.
there's no sound.
Yep. Henry, can you hear us?
Can anyone hear me? But I can't hear you. Ah,
I can hear you, Henry.
Henry?
There we go. I can hear now.
John?
I can hear now. Can you hear me? Okay.
Can you folks hear me okay? Okay. Henry, are you all set now? Can you hear us?
John, I think Henry's trying to dial in on the phone number.
Is your phone number end with 88?
Yes, it does.
That's you then.
That is me. I can see everybody, I just can't hear anybody.
I think you got the best of both worlds now.
Okay. Thank you for giving me all that information.
I believe they have the room muted right now, so.
Good.
So, okay, I will turn you back over to the group. I was just here to kind of give you a hand with technical stuff if you needed it. Maybe just double check with Steve, and I think you guys are all set.
John? Boy, Sean just got all fuzzy.
Can you see me? Oh, I think I got some type of background thing going on.
Right, this is, watch. Hello?
What?
Your voices are not picking up well.
Now we got interference. Did you join as? It's MPOA. Okay, and you said join from the computer? Yep. John, can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Okay, then it's something to do with the microphone. Can Susan hear?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. So is that everybody? Everyone is here. Just picking up on the audio, can you hear me okay now?
Yes. Much better.
There we go. Okay, why don't we slide it over here? The acoustics in this room are terrible. And I think you can call the meeting to order.
All right, well, assuming that everybody can hear and we're all set to do this through Zoom or WebEx as well as in person, I'm going to call the meeting to order. This is a meeting of the Economic Development Subcommittee of the Norwich Public Utilities Board of Commissioners. We do have a quorum with Bill Wazika here in person and Nishan via WebEx. We also have Henry Resnikoff on board. We have Susan Lent and anyone else? No, I think that's it. The first thing we are sort of obligated to do at any meeting is ask if there is any public comment. I don't believe there's anyone from the public who has called in. So if that is in fact the case, we'll just move on from that. And the next item on the agenda is the legislative update, and I believe that's Susan.
Yeah, so Susan, we want to do this in two parts. The first is the general legislative update, and then when we start talking about our specific economic development opportunities, we want to move into executive session.
Okay, fine. Thank you. Thanks for clarifying.
And maybe let me just add one quick thing. As I said, Henry Resnikoff is here, as is Susan. We have been involved, but not directly involved with Norwich Business Park North. It's something that we started with bringing it to NCDC and making option payments and so forth and so on. But there's an effort, I think, to see if there is any federal money available for Business Park North, and that has sort of migrated to the committee that handles that. That includes Chris and Kevin and myself and a few other people, including Susan Lent, who's been separately hired in that regard. And then there's NPU that has a bunch of utility-related projects. And so one of the reasons Henry is here, I think, is to bring us up to date on where things stand with Business Park North and their potential interest in federal and state funding, so that we are coordinated and not doing things inefficiently. There may be a way for us to focus on that and work together on Business Park North. There may be other initiatives that we want to pursue separately, but it's just to improve communications. And with that, I'll turn it over to Susan.
Great, thanks. And so I assume for purposes of the public session, it's okay to go through this presentation?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right. Well, before I start the presentation, I'll just general overview of what's going on in Washington that may be relevant is obviously the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act has become law. That President Biden signed it into law on November 15th, and the other relevant, well, there's a couple of other relevant developments. One is the Build Back Better law, which includes funding for some of the Environmental Protection Agency programs that we'll talk about in the deck when I go through that. Those are funded in the Build Back Better Act. That the Senate is looking to try to make progress on that bill and possibly pass it before Christmas, although not clear whether that will happen before Christmas or in the new year. So that will be relevant also to NPU in terms of additional funding, and then the annual funding bills, the annual appropriations bills for fiscal year 2022, which will also have funding for programs that may be of interest to NPU. That got put off until February. Congress agreed and passed a continuing resolution to fund programs at fiscal year 2021 levels until I believe it was February 18th. So that will roll forward into the new year. So with that, I'll turn to the presentation. So you can go to the next slide. So and just a kind of a refresher for folks, the infrastructure law, $1.2 trillion law with over $550 million in new spending, including for energy, water, transportation programs, among other things that would be of interest to the NPU. So I wanted to highlight first the funding for electric vehicle infrastructure grants. There's $2.5 billion for a competitive grant program that state and local governments could apply for not just electric vehicle, but electric vehicle and other types of infrastructure, alternative fuel infrastructure, hydrogen and natural gas in particular, with a focus on putting the projects in low income areas. So I just wanted to flag that. And then the second program is focused just on electric vehicles. It's a $5 billion program where funds will go to the state, and then the state would determine where the funds would go. Both programs encourage public-private partnerships and will provide funding for operating assistance so that a governmental entity could enter into a contract with a private entity to install, operate, and maintain infrastructure in that community and get paid, to some type of a risk revenue sharing agreement that you could enter into with the private entity, and you could pay them up to 5 years of operating expenses as part of a contract with them. So next slide. So moving on to the EPA Environmental Protection Agency programs, the biggest infusion of cash goes to the revolving loan programs, which we've talked about before, and I know that MPO has participated in these programs quite significantly in the past. So you know a lot about them, but there's the Drinking Water Revolving Loan Program and then the Clean Water Revolving Loan Program. The Drinking Water Program got $30 billion in additional funds for capitalization of the programs. Over 11.7 billion is very kind of fungible money for any of the eligibilities under the program, which you are all well aware of, and 49% can go to grants or forgivable loans to disadvantaged communities. So I know that'll be of interest. 15 billion is for lead service pipe replacement, of which, again, 49% can go to forgivable loans or grants, and then 4 billion is to address emerging contaminants. Then the Clean Water Revolving Loan Program, there's 5 billion, and the same amount of over 11.7 billion is for capitalization and for the otherwise eligible activities under that program, and 1 billion is for emerging contaminants. So next slide. Brownfields grants, I threw that in there. I wasn't sure if this would be relevant or not, but I just threw that in there. That's an existing EPA program, and it got a $1.5 billion cash infusion. So next slide. So I listed, and I did not include the other EPA programs. There's several, at least I thought I had done those, but let me just mention that there's a few different EPA programs that were not funded in the infrastructure law, so they're not in this slide deck, but that would be funded in the Build Back Better bill, including the municipal stormwater grants and there's pilot program for alternative water sources. And so there's a few different programs that would be funded as part of the Build Back Better Act. So, and then, the Grid Infrastructure Reliability Competitive Grants, that's a $5 billion program, that you could apply for projects to make the grid more reliable. There's the Energy Infrastructure Federal Financial Assistance Program, which is also a new competitive grant program that would allow you to demonstrate innovative approaches to transmission, storage, and distribution infrastructure. And there's a $50 million transmission facilitation program where the Department of Energy would enter into contracts and they would guarantee that they would purchase energy so that you could finance projects with the knowledge that you'd be able to have revenue coming in, and then it's a loan and it's forgivable at the end as well. So next slide. Or is that it? That might be the end. Anyway, was that the last slide?
Slide 6.
Okay.
Energy efficiency.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I didn't see that move. Apologies. Okay. 250 million for energy efficiency revolving loan fund capitalization grants. This is a new program for state revolving loans to make loan program to make low interest loans for commercial energy audits and residential energy audits, and then to make upgrades based on the recommendation. And 500 million for energy efficiency improvements and renewable energy improvements at public schools. There's $3.5 billion for the Weatherization Assistance Program, which is an existing program. It got a lot of funding during the Recovery Act, the 2009 Recovery Act, and this would provide another large infusion of funds for weatherization improvements. Next slide. The energy efficiency and conservation block grants, that's also an existing program that would get an additional 550 million. And then the smart grid matching grant program, 3 billion. This program was also started in the Recovery Act, and it provides funds for various types of smart grid technologies for buildings and for equipments and appliances, and it can go to governmental entities or the private sector. Next.
That's it.
That's it. Okay, great. All right. Well, yeah, that's that's basically a summary of the programs, and then with the idea that there may be additional EPA funding when this Build Back Better law passes.
Susan, I have a question.
Yes.
You know, like under the state drinking water revolving loan program, it mentions disadvantaged communities. Norwich is a distressed community based on criteria from the Department of DECD. Would that be compatible? I mean, is it a different criteria? You know?
That's a good question. Let me double check and get back to you on that. I'm assuming the answer is yes, but let me take a look at the law and see how it actually defines the term. I think it uses the census, like the definition that's broadly used, and I'm assuming that you'd qualify under that definition. But I'll let you know the exact.
I'm looking at it right now. The disadvantage is an annual median household income less than 80% of the statewide median income, which is different from the distressed community rules, but I can't remember exactly what those distressed rules are. But they're definitely two.
But they're related. I mean, they're not completely opposite.
Right. I think so.
I think the State Department of Economic and Community Development looks at relative housing prices and and individual income and those sorts of things, which kind of explains, among other things, why so many Eastern Connecticut communities are on the list. Because when you compare housing prices from here from Fairfield County or whatever, we don't look good. The reason is Fairfield County is so high, not that Norwich is so bad, but nevertheless, that happens. And we might as well take advantage of it.
Yeah, I'll double check. My understanding is typically the federal standard looks at the income, the median income in the census tract, and the percentage of the median income is to the national level to determine what the test is. That's the way they typically do it for different programs. There's some variation, but I'll pull the definition and let you know what it says specifically.
One last question. Again, regarding the state drinking water revolving loan fund, the $15 billion for lead service pipe replacement, if that's something that we pursue, is there other state monies available by the Department of Public Health for that same issue? Is this above and beyond what might be available to the state?
The state has not said what's going to be available yet. They said apply through the conventional means, and they'll let us know what it is down the road, but you got a lot of time to apply. So we applied as a conventional drinking water state revolving fund, and then we'll see how they're going to administer it. Been on the phone with Cam Walden, and he doesn't know the details yet. They're having EPA calls now. Okay. Thank you.
And just so Susan understands, I think what we're talking about is potentially replacing lead pipes from the street to the faucet. Our lead pipes.
Street to foundation wall.
Okay. Our lead pipes underground going to the various houses are not lead pipes. We've corrected that, we think.
As many as we know of.
As many as we know
We may
of.
find some other additional ones.
That's
I mean,
good.
I just think that's a significant distinction, and also we do treat the water with what?
Anti-corrosive compounds, yes.
Yes, which minimizes the threat of lead, I guess.
Good.
I almost sounded like I knew what I was talking about there.
So, and I'll mention that this is really just a snapshot of the infrastructure bill, because as I mentioned, there may be additional EPA funding for these types of, lead pipe replacement and other projects of interest in Build Back Better. But then also, when Congress passes the fiscal year 2022 appropriations law, there could be some additional funding for these types of projects, because there were some authorizations in the infrastructure law that were authorizations subject to appropriation that would also fund lead pipe replacement, but there's no funding yet. So we'll just keep looking. So this is what you can kind of count on as of today that's available, but there'll probably be other funds that I'll tell you about as time goes on.
So Susan, I mean, one of the things you've consistently said, and I assume it is correct, still correct, is that there are many sources of federal and state funding available for projects. That this bill is a big deal, and it's something everyone is focused on right now. But there are ongoing federal budget programs that are renewed every year that could potentially provide us with some money. There are earmarks that now exist that potentially could provide us with some money, and those sorts of things. So, I mean, I think that that's something we need to kind of focus on and not just compete in the sweepstakes for the infrastructure money.
Yeah, no, I think that's really true. I think there's going to be certain like low-hanging fruit, so to speak, where the money is going to be available immediately. So one thing also to keep in mind is this infrastructure bill is kind of twofold, or I guess threefold, you could say. One is they bumped up funding for programs that exist in current law. An example being the revolving loan fund, the EPA revolving loan programs. So that money will probably go out relatively soon, because there's already a structure in place by which those programs operate. I mean, brownfields, which you may or may not care about, is another example. It's an existing program. It's not, the money will go out and there's a structure in place to get it. But then there's some other programs that are new programs that it's going to take a while for, whether it's EPA or Department of Energy, to set those programs up. So you also have to have kind of short-term, medium-term, and long-term strategies in terms of being ready to go after and spend money. So that's another, I think, important distinction between the money.
And Susan, is there going to be in most of these things a local match or not?
It depends on the program.
Okay.
So we'll have to go through each one. Right.
Including in the infrastructure bill.
Yes. So for example, I know off the top of my head on transportation, which I know the transportation programs without having to look them up, that they all, or 99% of them, require a match. But I need to look up on the EPA programs and the DOE programs and tell you specifically which ones do and don't. I think some of the EPA, the energy programs don't all require a match. So, but I have to take a look and see for the different. I'd have to go look up and tell you for each one what the rules are.
All right, and I think maybe there's three of us, Bill Wazika and Sean and myself, as committee members here. I mean, maybe it would make sense for each of us to sort of mention to you what we think we have a particular interest in.
Yep.
And have you either say, yeah, that makes sense, or no, that doesn't make sense, or it's a high risk, or whatever.
Yep.
Or it can be done through the regular budget, or through earmarks, or whatever. Does that make sense to you?
Yes.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what I am most intrigued by, and I preface this by saying that this is the Economic Development Subcommittee, and our number one strategic objective for Norwich Public Utilities is economic development, both conventional and entrepreneurial And so that has always sort of been my focus. And I think that there are 3 interconnected programs, potentially. One is the water interconnect between Groton and Norwich that would improve the reliability of the water supply. There's the prospect of doing a gas pipeline extension to what is known as Preston Riverwalk, and I think it's potentially something we could do that would be compatible with hydrogen. I don't know that we're going to use hydrogen, but at least that possibility if it gets us over the federal hurdle. And the third thing is to bring 34.5 power to the Preston Riverwalk site. Just a quick background for you on Preston Riverwalk. It was a $400 million project. My guess is it's going to be more than that when it's actually built. Being done by the Mohegan tribe. It is directly across the Thames River from the Mohegan Reservation and the Mohegan Sun Casino, and it has the prospects of potentially employing thousands of people, not hundreds, and many of them would be in relatively low-income positions, I think. They're talking about 3 hotels. They're talking about amusement park type things and so forth and so on. But it would be a huge win for Norwich Public Utilities because I think we would have the capacity to build them for all of our utilities. That we have a 10% pilot to the city, that would go up. And it would also give us additional revenue that we potentially could allocate to projects that don't have any economic payoff, but are nevertheless capital projects we ought to be doing. And then one other thing that I find intriguing is installing 34K electric to the 4 substations that we have that would increase reliability in Norwich in the immediate term, and would also provide a better infrastructure for us to do carbon-free or green energy production in the future. Now, I'm not an electric guy, so if I screwed that up, please let me know.
Yeah, pretty good.
But I think those are my interests, and I'd be curious about what you think about those projects, potential getting funding from the budget or from earmarks or from the infrastructure bill, and then we'll have Bill Wazika and Ashen talk about their projects too.
Sure, yeah. So I would say the first project, the water interconnect, at a minimum, we should be able to fund it through the the revolving loan programs, which I think you know already. And then the question is whether or not there's money that comes about for any of these new EPA programs that would fund projects that provide alternative water sources, and there's at least one program that might provide funding for that project. So those are going to be the opportunities there. In terms of an earmark, the only thing to say is that the earmarks have tended to be relatively small, so it might just be $1 million earmark. So the question is whether or not that would be worthwhile. They are funding. I mean, they at least this year, and we'll see how the earmarks play out. But
my understanding is that, Susan, last year we sought an earmark grant from Representative Courtney for the water interconnect, and at least we were told it was close but no cigar.
Same with Senator Blumenthal, we applied
Yeah.
that.
So my point was, it is the type of project that could get an earmark. The question would be how big the earmark would be, but that is certainly, I would say the three opportunities for that project is the revolving loan, an earmark, or this EPA program that may that may get funded in the Build Back Better law. So that's the water. So the gas pipe extension, the Department of Energy funding is generally like kind of on the research and development demonstration side of it. So they're funding, kind of projects that are demonstrating new technology. So they do have a program that's funding hydrogen demonstration projects. And there's also some loan programs, but that's also on the new commercializing new technologies type of side versus just a kind of an energy improvement. So I guess I'm not 100% sure on the gas pipeline extension that would where that program would be, unless you did decide that you were going to do it as a hydrogen program. And then they do have a hydrogen demonstration program where they're picking hydrogen hubs around the country. So that would be something to think about. So the on the energy side, I will say that, and I've talked to Henry about this, the Department of Commerce has an Economic Development Administration that they have grants, and they will fund utility infrastructure around projects. So this Preston Riverwalk, just like Business Park North, is the type of project that could get funding for from the Department of Commerce for energy, water, transportation, all types of infrastructure associated with a project that will create jobs and economic development.
Susan, I don't know if I said this or not, but the developer of Preston Riverwalk is the Mohegan tribe. So it's the tribal advantage of being involved in the development, although they are not extending, to the best of my knowledge, the reservation, but rather are doing it on town land, and it can essentially be a fee simple development.
Right, and a lot of the programs have eligibility for tribes, so that is something to take another look at. And this is just my kind of off the cuff comment on the energy side. Is that it's a little more complicated. The infrastructure bill on the energy side is mostly on the kind of on the R&D side of energy, and then there's obviously the tax credits and the Build Back Better law for renewable energy, and that's a lot of what the energy funding is. So I guess the question is whether you can make this into some type of a demonstration project that would be successful versus just conventional energy infrastructure needs. That is funded on the transportation side and somewhat on the EPA water side, but not as much on the energy side.
Okay.
Well, I agree with Bob on those 4 projects because I think the greatest potential for economic development will be the Riverwalk property, hopefully in the next few years if everything goes according to Hoyle. And so I would agree with him that those are 4 very important projects that, will impact the whole region, just not Preston, but Norwich and the other surrounding towns. So those 4 projects I think are very important. But besides that, my priorities are anything that will protect public health or the environment. So, one, replacing the lead and copper pipes is going to be, I think, a good project. I'm also interested in making repairs. We have the Greenville Dam, which is a hydroelectric power dam, and it's in great need of repair. So anything that could be Any funding that could be used there to make those improvements would be helpful. And then, of course, the wastewater treatment plant upgrades is another important project for not only Norwich, but the region. It will improve water quality, surface water quality of the Thames River all the way down to the Sound. So, again, not only Norwich benefiting, but other communities adjacent to the river will benefit, and we'll see great improvements in recreational use of the water body.
So, and I apologize. I'm just going to interrupt you because I can't hear you very well. It's kind of coming in mumbled, so I heard you talk about the hydroelectric dam, but I didn't understand what you were saying with the next project.
All right, so one of the projects, I'll start with the Greenville Dam improvement. So anything that's available that could be used to make repairs to the dam would be something very important to me. Replacing the lead and copper services. I don't know how big of a problem that is in town, but certainly it's a public health issue, and what happened in Detroit is something that we want to avoid at all costs. So if it is a big problem that can't be handled with chemicals to treat the water to prevent leaching, then that's something that would be important to me. And then finally, the wastewater treatment plant upgrades is another important one. Any funding that could be used to offset the cost, the cost to make those upgrades has been escalating for a number of years now, but we're finally in a position to move that project forward. So again, anything that could help us with that, that's going to not only have a benefit for the city of Norwich and public utilities, but it's also going to have great improvement to add great improvement to the water quality of the Thames River all the way down to the Long Island Sound. So that's important to me.
Yeah, so Bill, we got two lists here.
Yeah.
One's economic development and one is pure infrastructure. Pure infrastructure projects, we are doing those whether, if there was no programs here available, we'd be doing them maybe at a slower pace and less a year, right. But every one of these needs to get done. Right. So I don't think it's a question of whether we apply or we try. Susan has both lists. Yep. And I think this is really how much are on the economic development side where the real opportunities are, because, for the sewer plant, we're going to be looking for maximum funding in that plant. Right. But we have to meet permit. We have to proceed regardless.
I'm not a fishery biologist, but I do know that I've heard this more than once, that making improvements to surface water quality in Norwich Harbor will only add to the recreational benefits. And it's a tremendous amount. You'd be surprised the amount of money that's generated from fishing in Norwich Harbor. And I think people know that the water quality isn't the best, so that I think it is kind of tied to economic development.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
But that's good. No, but I will say that I agree with Bob on the 4 projects that he mentioned as the key projects.
Yeah, and there are a number of these that will enhance, the resale value of homes in town. Right. Lead and copper, right? That right. Is economic development, right? Right. Many of these will have multi-uses.
I think when it comes to the wastewater plant, I mean, on one hand, we have a tentative financing plan in place. Yeah. And I don't know exactly if documents have been signed or whatever, but I mean, there is state and federal financing, and we have had a rate consultant come in, and we've increased the rates for sewer usage, and between all 3 of them, we should have been able to pay for the wastewater project before inflation. We'll see if we can pay for it now. So, I mean, that would suggest, well, that's already taken care of. But on the other hand, and I haven't done this, I've kind of studied on this or anything, but my guess is that if you looked at the census tracts in Norwich that are served by sewer versus the census tracts in Norwich that are not served by sewer and have their own septic systems and so forth, what you would find is that the sewer census tracts have much lower income on average than Norwich does in total. And so that because you're dealing with, you're dealing with a situation where it's lower income people that are going to be putting the bill from the rate increases, which I believe are 6% a year for 5 years? 4 years? 3 years?
But it'll be on, right.
Not transitory.
Now, Bob, especially with Mike in the room, I'm not gonna downplay the amount of work that still has to go into getting the funding completed in York. Planning's all done.
Yep.
Everybody's ready to grease the skids and make this happen, but obviously there's a lot of work to be done. And there's a lot of other opportunity, which I don't even know if Deep understands all the options of what this is gonna bring. So, we were able to have a conversation with, Representative Courtney, and told him that there's a lot of stuff in sewer that's dictated by state statute on what the participation rate and the grant rate is. But if there's ways they can help when it comes to administering this to make that above and beyond conventional, that's where the benefit's gonna be here. And with distressed communities or disadvantaged communities, there may be some more additional opportunities. So we gotta make sure we have an open mind to that.
And again, I don't know if it'll make any difference or not, but I'm telling you, I really believe that if you take a hard look at the census tract, what you're gonna find is the census tract income, that are served by sewers is less than it is for all of Norwich, and Norwich isn't that good to begin with.
It's a good point, Bob.
All right, great. Sean, do you have any questions or comments or?
Well, I was seeing if Steve, you can share her presentation again, because I wasn't able to see it the first time fully. But I'm into if I had to give you a decision today, I would say I'm into anything that helps with the clean energy, whether it be hydrogen opportunities, with us, or green energy. Obviously, I'm one of the newer commissioners here, so some of the projects I wouldn't be all familiar with, as far as everything goes with that, huh? But I have a passion too. Definitely, with the Preston Riverwalk, if there's opportunities there for us to make a difference in our county, I'm all in for that as well too, to bring those type of economic development opportunities to it. There we go.
And I did not include the hydrogen hubs. I'll send some follow-up information on that and the census tracts.
Absolutely. And then my other one, I was really did find interesting was the electric vehicle formula program. I'm not sure, if that's in our scope of services, but I did find that to be very interesting topic, to help with green and clean energy. And if you go down, I think there's one more on the last page, if I'm not mistaken. And also, and I think the energy efficiency conservation block grants, is something that I think that a lot of people can, benefit from. So I found those to be something that popped out. Obviously, clean drinking water, as Bill said, we don't want to have another opportunity for Flint, Michigan, but that's definitely, something that's near and dear to me. But those are the things that, if I had a passion or I had to choose from, those are some of the things I would like to see come to fruition within my time here.
Yep. And one thing about lead and copper, we are meeting all lead and copper requirements. We have never missed any of the requirements.
Okay.
Requirements are going to change, and that's the difference. They want to have all these pipes out of the ground. Inside the house, different story, but outside of the house, they want all the pipes going. That's what's not come down yet, but that's what the programs are in place to get rid of.
Do you think that if there's pushback from the homeowner not to do that, because they're responsible from the curb, from the box to the foundation, right?
Mhm.
So if they refuse, and can we push them to do it, or?
You may have more of a hat on than I do of where DEEP's gonna end up on this, or DPH, right?
DPH, yeah.
You know, it's beyond our control. And, you know, there could be some things where people are allowed to grandfather in and not, because they don't want to rip up the, you know, the family rose garden or something.
But once the money is gone, should they sell the house at some subsequent time down the road?
They may be required to pay themselves.
Pay themselves, right?
We'll see how the legislation is written.
Any idea when that time frame for that to come on? No?
No. It's Lori Matthews saying it's coming soon. That's what we get.
So let me mention just one more thing. You know, I dream about Norwich public utilities like this. And my latest dream, and Kevin, you can comment on this because you went to one of the sessions on this, I believe. One of my dreams is that we get a big map of Connecticut that shows the fact that Norwich is second, and we have 6 of the 10 distressed communities either adjacent to Norwich or close to Norwich, and we get Preston, we get the Mohegan Tribe to go up to Hartford, and we sit down with the governor, who, and Connecticut is rolling in money right now. The rainy day fund is fully funded, and they're looking to places to put money. And we go there with our little map, and we talk about, the 3 groups talk about the Preston Riverwalk project and the Business Park North Pike project. And we say, Governor, this is a distressed area. You can make a transformational change, not a marginal change, a transformational change by helping us fund all of these projects. And I don't know, maybe he throws us out, but that's something I think would make sense.
Yeah, I mean, all I can do is say, I have the cartoon sitting on my desk in my office that shows the limousine on the western side of the state, the VW Bug on the eastern side of the state, and that cartoon is 35 years old. Here we are. And all I can do is say hallelujah.
And just for background, I improperly, when I was a newspaper reporter covering the city, sat down in an office with Jim Stanley, who was head of NCDC in the chamber at the time, and he had a big conference of the regional economic development group, and he had a banner that said Action Country, and he said, what do you think of that body, Action Country? And I said, I don't think it doesn't say anything to me. How about something like the other Connecticut? And he said, I like that, and that's where that came from.
Well, just further color commentary on this, just so that you're aware, and Henry just learned this via email a few minutes ago. After the Connecticut Economic Development Summit last week, Thursday, the Assistant Secretary of Commerce, who heads the EDA and all these EDA funds that Susan's talking about that are out there, said, here's my email address, send me an email. Nobody ever does. Only 4 people have ever taken me up on that. So I sent her an email. And I sent her that cartoon. And I essentially said everything that you just testified to. And come to find out today that so did Paul Weiscarver, the recently seated sector executive director. So I guess we're both just realizing we throw fastballs until we get thrown out of the game.
That's right.
So we're messaging, but at the same time, we've got to get smart about what we want to pitch. I just, I got me kickstarted. I mean, fix/replace the Mohegan Pequot Bridge. Feed the transportation infrastructure, your left, my right. Feed the transportation infrastructure that takes care of the flow to the Preston Riverwalk. Provide the utilities that feed that Preston Riverwalk development. Fix the marina, and I don't know what to do on the east side, but do something on the east side too. And that
Throw in a boat launch and move the park, make the park a park and a boat launch a boat launch.
Or 2 or 3.
Increase the harbor use.
That's right. That's right. No, really.
Improve water quality and. I think it's a
That's the
big
big,
plus.
that's the big concept, that if we could ever just get the funnel to turn on over here, we put the money into those 3 or 4 things in that triangle, and we made a transformation there.
All right, so does anyone have any other questions for Susan, at this point? And if not, should we talk to Henry at this point, or what would you
Well,
recommend?
if we're gonna start talking about specific things, then we should go into executive session now. If we're talking in general, we can stay here, just call. Is there anything specifically that's got your, business sensitive, in what we're doing to Henry about?
Well, Henry would know that better than I would, but I don't think so. But Henry, what do you want to do?
I can certainly bring everybody up to date, but I would think it's appropriate to be in executive session.
Why don't we do it? I mean, why not? Have a motion to go into executive session.
I'll make that motion now.
Huh?
And we wanted to do Susan?
Yeah, I'll second it.
Susan can stay on if she wants, I mean,
Do you want me to stay on?
Yeah, there's gonna be a breakout session that pops up on your screen. Just accept that breakout session. We'll go into executive session, okay?
So Bob, maybe to, go over, start off with Henry talking about funding opportunities.
Yep.
And then when we get into just general business part stuff, we can cut Susan loose.
Yeah, that'd be fun. That'd be good.
I'd rather not keep her here longer than she has to be.
Yeah, and Sean, do we have a second from you?
Yes, I said second for executive.